The Security Council met today on the situation in South Sudan. After the public briefing by Under-Secretary General for Peacekeeping Operation, Mr. Hervé Latsous, and Executive Director of UN Women, members of the Council examined in closed consultations the recommendations made by the Secretary General on UNMISS in his report dated 6 March 2014. Members also heard from the Special Representative of the Secretary General and Head of UNMISS, Hilde Johnson, about the latest developments on the ground. In his report, the Secretary General requests the Security Council to consider the authorization of the temporary increase in UNMISS military and police strengths for a period of 1 year. These resources would further the capacity of UNMISS to protect civilians. The Secretary General also considers that there is a requirement for the mission to prioritize its activities and to focus in particular on the protection of civilians, monitoring human rights, and contributing to the creation of security conditions conducive to the delivery of humanitarian assistance in the areas most affected by the conflict. Council members took note of these recommendations, and while all members agreed that there is a need to review and to reprioritize the activities of the mission, questions were raised about the appropriateness of a new mandate for UNMISS. Council members expressed appreciation for the work of UNMISS under difficult circumstances. They underlined that the continued SOFA violations and harassment of the UN personnel are unacceptable and agreed on the need to send a strong message in this regard. Members of the Council are deeply concerned about ongoing violations of the 23rd January cessation of hostilities agreement. The deterioration of the humanitarian situation is extremely worrying, with the looming onset of the rainy season. And the number of IDPs have, since December, increased from 34,000 to over 900,000 now, 900,000 IDPs. So just to give you an idea about the humanitarian situation. Members of the Council also expressed concern at the widespread violations of international humanitarian and human rights law, and in this context they welcomed the establishment of the African Union Commission of Inquiry. Council members reiterated their full support for the IGAD-led mediation effort and underlined that this process must be as inclusive as possible. Members also took note of the decision of IGAD to authorize the prompt deployment of a protection and deterrent force to ensure the protection of observers deployed under the monitoring and verification mechanism. The urgent need for further information concerning the mandate of this regional force and possible support by and cooperation with the UN was stressed by Council members. Finally, Council members voiced concerns about a further regionalization of the conflict in South Sudan. And perhaps in conclusion, I would say that Council members very much share the feeling that we are at the crossroads in relation to the situation in South Sudan and also the UN's involvement in that country.
The Undersecretary General Latsous, in his briefing, he talked about this unacceptable vilification of the United Nations, and he mentioned media articles. He also said that somehow the government had turned down the UN to do a joint investigation of the weapons trucks that were found near Bentiu. One, I wanted to know, what was said? What's the UN sense of its own role in this? What the government found to be a violation of the SOFA agreement by the UN in terms of moving weapons by road rather than by air? And also, is it really the UN's business to be criticizing articles written about the UN in South Sudan? This idea of vilification, is this a move by the Security Council or DPKO to say how South Sudanese media should cover the mission?
I think you might ask SRSG Hilde Johnson also about that, but I think this goes very far as I understand, all this effort in this campaign against UNMISS. And if you have seen, I think there are some pictures where you see a picture of Mrs. Johnson and next to her hat, a revolver. That's not, necessarily how you would like to see, these are not acceptable ways of engaging with the UN force, which is there. And there are clear violations, and these clear violations are now really hampering the mission, not only in their core mandate, protection of civilians, but even the delivery of humanitarian assistance. And I think the Council will, certainly we will also try to send a common message about these issues.